This week on Coincidence or Godincidence.
I'm a creature of habit. I always drove to school the same way every day. Thank heavens I didn't drive to school the same way this day.
I was over $350,000 in debt at 15% interest. That's when I started to seek God and ask Him for a sign in the sky.
I know with all certainty that God sent that deer that day to save my life.
Life-changing, unexplained events happen every day to ordinary people. Many claim it's divine intervention. In the next 30 minutes, you will hear amazing stories of miracles, mysteries, and hope. You can decide if it's coincidence or Godincidence. Now, here is your host, Steve Rose.
The Lord works in mysterious ways, and today we share more stories of miracles and mysteries to try to prove it. Kathy Doms had a certain route she always traveled when taking the kids to school. One day she felt compelled to take another, and you'll find out why. And Steve Swan says he heard God tell him that it would be soybeans that would save the farm. Harlan Akela thought he was crazy. Maybe you would have too. Stay here for this one. And would the God of the universe plan a collision between a car and a deer? You can decide for yourself when you hear Randy Bohn's story. I'm Steve Rose, asking you to stay with us for the next half hour because I truly believe you just may be left asking yourself, was that a coincidence or a Godincidence?
There's the right way, the wrong way, the same way, and sometimes just a different way. Coming up next, we will learn which way saved Ben's life.
Welcome back, friends. With me now is Kathy Doms, who had a pretty tight routine when it came to taking the kids to school. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Steve.
You are a person of habit. Talk about that, where taking the kids to school is concerned.
Yes, I am. We would get out the door every day by 7 o'clock. Alexis and I would go pick up her friend Allie. We'd go down Racine Avenue, hit College, go through to Maple Avenue, and then on to Carroll and drop them off at school.
But one day, you decided to go a different way.
I did.
Okay.
I did. I ended up turning on Grand Avenue,
Okay.
which I never did. Traffic is horrible that way.
Okay.
And I went that way that day.
And then what did you see, Kathy?
I saw a boy getting towards the railroad tracks riding a bike, and I saw him fall down.
Okay, and he falls on the bike near the railroad tracks. Okay, did you know him?
I did. It was Ben. He went to school, grade school, all through grade school with my daughter Alexis.
Okay, was he okay?
Well, as I was driving, he was still laying there, and I was not comfortable driving by, so I stopped.
Okay.
And the girls didn't want me to because they didn't want to be embarrassed because, you know, they were at the age where boys would think, oh, mom's, you know, be a mom.
Okay.
But by the time I got to Ben, he was still laying on the ground, and when he turned over, his face was as white as a ghost.
Okay. Did he think he was okay?
He said, I think I just got the breath knocked out of me.
And what did your mother's instinct tell you at that time?
I said, Scott and Pat, you go on to school.
Okay.
Ben, I'm taking you home. And I
Okay.
loaded him up in the car, dropped the girls off at school, and took them home.
So you take him home. Who meets you there? What did that look like, Kathy, when you took Ben home?
Well, when I pulled in the driveway, I knew his mom was still home.
Okay.
And I knocked on the door and said, Margie, I brought Ben home. He fell by the railroad track, and he doesn't look right.
Later that day, you call Ben's mom to find out, you know, the developments, and what did she say?
When I called, I actually got his older brother.
Oh, okay.
And he said that they were at the hospital, and I was surprised to hear that. And he said he would have his mom call me later that night.
And then did she call you?
She did.
Okay, what did she say?
She said, Kathy, if you hadn't have stopped and picked Ben up, he would have gone to school like normal. Later in the day, he probably would have felt like he was getting the flu or something, come home, went to bed, nothing would have happened. And she said, however, because you did that, we took him to the hospital. When he fell, his liver was nicked, and he had sepsis. And he could have died.
Oh my goodness, is that serious, nicking the liver, obviously?
Oh yes, it poisons your system,
Okay.
and people die from that all
And
the
so
time.
although he'd have felt like he was fine in school, something could have happened suddenly. Oh
Yes.
my goodness, wow. Kathy, let me ask you this. In your opinion, why did you take a different route to school that day?
I truly believe that God guided me that way because I would never have gone that way.
My goodness. And was that the first time you had ever gone that way, or was there a couple other times you had? Or
No, it was the very first time.
the very first. Let me ask you this. Did you go that way a couple other times after that, or
No.
you didn't? Oh my
No.
goodness, this gets good. Well, put her right here, buddy. Put the mother's part right. Put the mother's part right there. I love moms. I love the way moms think, and I'm especially glad. And I'm here on behalf of Ben, thanking you for taking a different way for Ben. Kathy, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you, you too.
And Coincidence or Godincidence, we'll be right back right after this.
Coming up next, when about to lose the farm, Steve knew he had to count on the Lord to get him out of this financial crisis.
Here now is a segment we call Kathy's Godincidence Notebook, and to share it is Kathy Rose.
Stacy Thompson was feeling uneasy, even somewhat worried, about the holiday trip upon which she and her husband Bob were embarking. Reluctantly, she decided to accompany her husband to his former hometown to celebrate Christmas with his family. The trip there turned out to be uneventful. However, on the trip home, she kept getting the feeling something was going to happen. Halfway home, Stacy fell asleep when she heard Bob yell, "We're sliding!" They crossed the center line into the ditch, hitting a downed tree and flipping end over end. The next thing Stacy remembers was a pair of strong arms carrying her and laying her gently on the side of the road. Then she heard Bob calling from the cab of the truck, and it caused her to ask herself a question. If Bob was still in the truck, who had carried her to the side of the road? I'm Kathy Rose, hoping you've enjoyed another story from my Godincidence Notebook.
Welcome back to Coincidence or Godincidence. Joining me now on the set is Steve Swan. Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
Harlan Eckel is here. Harlan, it's good to see you.
Good to be here.
Okay. Steve, farming is not just physically demanding, but a huge financial risk at times. Talk about that.
Oh, yes. Not only financial risk, but you got the weather. You either get too much rain, not enough, and but I love farming. I love to plant seeds and watch things grow, and I grow Christmas trees. You got to shear them each year and tend to them, and be outside in the sun. It's a wonderful life.
And you know, you're a man of faith, so I would imagine you call on the Lord to intervene where He needs to intervene.
Many times, yeah.
Okay.
Now, thank God that He's there to give us instruction.
All right. Sometimes the financial risk is great. You need help, Harlan. That's where he came in, because Steve, at one point several years ago, you needed Harlan's help.
Yeah, had some bad crops and prices were down, and I was ready to lose the place.
Okay.
To farm credit.
Harlan, how much did he borrow?
Well, he needed $350. This was not a small little deal. It was not an easy loan. We categorized them as easy, somewhat difficult, and almost impossible.
How long of a term was the loan?
It was a 3-year balloon. So it was just a bridge loan, relatively expensive from an investor situation to just get him to the next point where he would be able to refinance or fix the overall problem.
And how much did you need?
That was 350.
Oh, the 350. Okay, 350. Steve, then what happened?
Well, that was wonderful. We got the money. It put a Band-Aid on things. But then 7 years before this, actually that would have been 3.5 years before we got the loan, the Lord had spoke to my heart and said, soybeans is going to pay off the farm. Of course, I went running around to try to lease land to plant soybeans. I was a farmer. I had to grow soybeans. Well, nobody leased me lands, thank God, because soybeans stayed flat. But then I realized it was commodities. It was working commodities. Some other people had showed me that, and so I did some schooling on that. And but then when we got this loan, $350,000 with the balloon payment, it's like, oh Lord, the farm can't make this. Is the soybean thing, is that going to happen? Or do we have to work on something else? Show me a sign in the sky. I prayed that many times for 2 or 3 months, show me a sign in the sky. Well, one day I was on one of my farms, and a neighbor there was with me. And we heard this noise, loud. I kind of was ready to get back to the truck. It kind of scared me. Well, there's nothing coming on the ground, so we looked up, and immediately when we saw what was up there, there was not another peep. And there were between 18 and 22 white eagles flying in a circle. We figured they had to be. There are such things as white eagles, you know.
Okay.
So we figured no birds can soar like that and are that big. They were eagles. And there were 3 going on the inside, the opposite direction. Well, I said, Lord, now that's a sign in the sky. What does it mean?
So what did you do?
Well, of course, I was happy, and I took that to mean 3 years.
All right.
And that would have been a little later than when the balloon payment was due. The balloon payment was due in May. Well, it was way till the next February before I was able, I made the payments before the soybean came through.
Did you invest in the soybeans?
Yes, I did.
How much?
$20,000.
Right.
And I was able to buy, I knew at what price to buy, called my broker, said to buy at that price. It hit there for a few seconds on that price. I was on the phone with him, and he said, oh, it's going up. I don't think you're going to get them. He said, oh, you got them. So
Okay.
about the minute I bought, they started going up. I bought 300 options on soybean futures contracts at $36 a piece. A month and 4 days later, I sold them for $1,400 a piece, about a $380,000 then, which would be $360,000 profit.
Okay, so did you pay off part of the loan then?
No,
You didn't.
No,
You
we
didn't.
paid the
Harlan,
whole-
what are you thinking
That's
through
hard to
this?
tell that part of it.
Well, during this time period, I'm getting very impatient because I've got to answer to the investors, and Steve is all relaxed and all that sort of thing, but there isn't any money, and I know his financial situation. I know that he cannot bring that much money in, and I'm calling him regularly. What's your plan? What's going on? And he didn't even want to share all this stuff with me. If I knew he was betting on
go into
option
a-
contracts, I would have freaked out.
Would you go into a banker and tell him that story about the Eagles?
So yeah. So
I didn't know about the Eagles.
Fast forward a couple of weeks, he gives you a call. What does he say?
Well, I didn't know that he was working on the option contracts until the end. He did not share that with me.
Okay.
It was all hush hush. It was just, don't worry, Harlan, everything's going to be okay. And by the way, how did you want me to pay off the loan? And I said, well, you'll need a cashier's check. And he said, how do you get a cashier's check? And I said, well, you got to go to the bank and get one, but you have to cash there. They don't just give it to you.
And Harlan, how much was the check worth?
Well, as a matter of fact, we've got a copy of it right here, $352,185.50. It dropped on the conference table. I turned it over to make sure it was real. It was real.
And you didn't believe it. Steve, sometimes God answers prayers in unusual ways. We thank you so much for joining us. And no, without God's help, don't try options tradings at home. Don't do that. Say coincidence or God incidents. We'll be right back.
Coming up next, a party animal, a cougar, and a white-tailed deer all play a major role in our next story. Divine intervention is real. Many of you have experienced it firsthand. If you've had a God incident that has changed your life, we want to hear from you. Contact us at steve@corgtv.com or go to our website listed on the screen.
You're watching Coincidence or God Incidents, and I'm your host, Steve Rose, and with me now is Randy Bohn. Randy, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, in your earlier days, you used to be quite a party animal, I understand.
Yes, I was, unfortunately. Not so much a drinker at home, but when I'd get together with other people, there was no end to it.
And other people turned out to be your cousin Rick. There was a night in Appleton. Tell me a little bit about that. What happened?
That's right. I had called up Rick one day and I said, hey, how would you like to get together with your friends down in Appleton? He said, sure, come on down. So I had met them at a bar down there, and we continued, Steve, to make the rounds. And because we were all pool shooters in those days, we made sure that we played a lot of pool, but we drank a lot of drinks.
You did. How many drinks suppose you had?
If I had to guess, I'd probably say at least a dozen.
That's a lot.
Yeah, between beers and mixed drinks. But you know, you're just socializing and they just one after another.
And obviously your friend made sure you stayed overnight down there.
He tried to.
He did.
Yeah, Rick said, Randy, you're in no shape to drive home. I want you to stay at my place. I said, hey, I'm okay. I'm all right.
And so you got in your car. What were you driving, by the way?
I drove a souped up 1978 Mercury Cougar.
Okay.
And we called it a chick magnet, you know, in those days. Had the wire rims and the jacked up back, and it was quite a vehicle. It was about 30 feet long, too.
Oh, it was really? Okay.
Yeah.
So now you've decided to drive home. That sounds like a bad choice to me, Randy.
It turned out to be a very bad choice. I jump in my car, and I'm tired, and I'm drunk, and I start driving 41 north, and I get just outside of Kaukauna. And in those days, I didn't wear a seatbelt. I used my cruise control all the time. So here I am driving down the road, and I start thinking I can cheat on sleeping, so I start going from one eye to the next, thinking I'm catching up. And I end up passing out, and I'm dreaming. Actually, I can remember dreaming.
Okay. So your car is going 55, 60 miles an hour, and you're passed out.
Right. It's
That
like
doesn't sound like yeah.
It's like a speeding bullet. I mean, I was a kamikaze.
Okay.
Going down straight down the middle of the road.
What happened?
Well, as I was dreaming and sleeping, and my car was on autopilot, by a miracle, it stayed on the road, first of all, but all of a sudden I heard this explosion, like an atomic bomb, and I instantly jammed my foot on the brake, which I didn't realize was an automatic, snubs the engine, the car skidded off the side of the road, ended up kind of half in the ditch, half on the road, and I instantly saw that the front of my hood was crinkled, and I threw my head onto the steering wheel.
Were you injured, Randy?
I was not injured.
Okay, but the car was?
The hood was crinkled, and I thought, oh no, I hit somebody walking down the side of the road. I had a person in high school that had plowed into 3 girls, killed 2 of them, and went to prison. I thought that's where I was going.
Oh, no kidding. So you get out of the car.
Yes, I get out of the car sheepishly, but I knew I couldn't get away with this. So I walked out, walked back, and as I'm walking, I see this thing in the middle of the road, and as I get closer, my heart sank with kind of a anticipation that things were going to be okay. It was a dead deer right in the middle of the road.
You were relieved at that point. Randy, I got to ask you this question. Why do you think that deer wandered in front of this 1978 Cougar?
Well, I had a praying grandmother, Steve, and later on I realized the impact of this story. She was praying for me for a lot of years, and I think that our Creator from the beginning of time put that deer in that position so that I could hit it in the middle of the road at that exact moment, at that exact time.
Wow. Randy, how has this story affected your life?
I couldn't tell you how much it's impacted me, Steve, over the years, especially a couple of years after the incident where I ended up surrendering my life to our Creator.
Yeah, amen.
But I've told numerous people that that day was the first day of the rest of my life. Every day after that was a bonus because I shouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, and how long before you shelved all the beer and alcohol and the other stuff, beer and
A couple years later, when I ended up surrendering my life, he gave me the desire to not drink anymore.
Wow. What an incredible story that the God of the universe,
That's right.
at a perfect time while Randy was sleeping, and like you said, there you are, like a missile, passed out, and that thing stays on. What an incredible, incredible story. Did you ever tell your praying grandmother the story?
No, I did not. I don't believe that I did, but we got a chance to spend a lot of time together.
You did. Well, Randy, I appreciate you coming in to share this story with us. God bless you, man.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Steve.
it. Thanks for dropping by. Today we watch God protect a boy medically through the watchful heart of a mom, in this case, Kathy Doms. And a fellow by the name of Ben is grateful. Then God showed that he can provide money in some pretty profound ways, but we ask that you don't try this at home unless you feel you've heard from God, as Steve Swan did, and Harlan Akela is a believer. And always be careful when you're behind the wheel. You may not be as fortunate as Randy Bohn, who is here today because of a sacrificial deer. I'm Steve Rose, hoping you'll join us again next time when we'll hear more astonishing tales that just may leave you asking yourself, was that a coincidence or a God-incidence?
To contact Steve Rose, go to www.corgtv.com. Email steve@corgtv.com. Thanks to our sponsor, Johnsonville Sausage, served with pride since 1945, for making this program possible.